Welcome to the channel. Have you ever wondered just how thin the line between love and hate truly is? Or how far human compassion can be pushed when fueled by alcohol and greed? Today, I'm bringing you a story that isn't just about a mother's heartbreak. It's a high-stakes battle between the shadows of crime and the light of justice. This is the journey of Lee Tu Huyen, a young mother who risked everything to protect her child from the most terrifying forces imaginable. In the year 2026, peace felt like a luxury in this impoverished countryside. Torrential rains lashed down, threatening to swallow the old, dilapidated houses into the mud. Inside one of those homes, the thunder outside couldn't drown out the sharp, violent crack of a liquor bottle being slammed onto the table.
Lee Tu Huyen sat huddled in the corner of the porch, her arms wrapped tightly around her sleeping infant. Before her stood Tuan, the husband she once loved with all her heart, now reduced to a shell of a man, his eyes bloodshot from a never-ending bender. Tuan had stopped working long ago. His days were spent drowning in alcohol and venting his rage on his wife and child with bitter, venomous insults. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation Huyen had to endure. In her very own home, Tuan had the audacity to bring in a strange woman, his mistress. They laughed and drank right in front of Huyen, treating her as if she were an invisible ghost. "Get out! There's no room in this house for you or that brat anymore," Tuan roared, his rough hands grabbing Huyen's shoulder and shoving her violently out into the pitch-black rain. The rotting wooden door slammed shut, cutting Huyen off from the last bit of warmth she had. In the dead of night, the baby's piercing cries rang out, mingling with the howling storm. Huyen had nowhere to go. She could only run, her feet splashing through the mud as she fled that hell behind her. But as her legs grew weary on the slippery dirt path, a chilling sensation ran down her spine, snapping her into high alert. Behind the dense thicket of trees, the silhouette of a man dressed in black was silently tailing her. He didn't speak, he didn't attack. He just trudged closer, step by step, through the curtain of rain. Terror surged within her. Who was this? A debt collector sent by Tuan? Or another nightmare waiting for her and her child in the dark? The pounding of Huyen's heart in her chest seemed even louder than the rolling thunder above. The infant in her arms, who had just fallen asleep, startled awake and wailed as the chilling rainwater seeped through its thin clothing. Huyen didn't dare look back, but her ears could clearly distinguish the sound of footsteps treading on dry leaves and thick mud right behind her. Steady, cold, and patient. "Who's there? Please, leave us alone!" she screamed in desperation. But the only response was the wind whistling through the branches. The dark silhouette remained there, trudging along like a soulless entity. He wore a long black coat with a hood pulled low, completely concealing his face beneath the murky night. Every time Huyen tried to run faster, he quickened his pace. Whenever she stopped, exhausted, he stood still at a distance just enough to sow pure obsession. She realized she wasn't just fleeing from an abusive husband. She was falling into a deadly trap set by a calculated stranger. Huyen kept running, her bare feet bleeding from the jagged stones. Ahead, a faint light flickered from a wooden-walled house on the edge of the forest. It was her only hope. Using the last of her strength, she lunged toward the light and hammered frantically on the door. The door creaked open, and a woman with an anxious face appeared. "Save us!
Someone is trying to kill us.
Huen collapsed, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The woman hurried to pull her inside and bolted the door shut. Through a small crack in the door, Huen peered out. Beneath a flash of lightning that tore through the sky, the man in black stood in the middle of the yard, staring fixedly at the house for a long moment before silently turning back into the shadows of the rubber forest. His silence was more terrifying than any verbal threat. The next morning, as the faint rays of a new day struggled to pierce through the thick, heavy clouds, the kind-hearted woman, named Lan, took Tu Huen to meet the local authorities. In a modest office, they met Officer Van, a local police officer with a steady and direct gaze. Tu Huen sat across from Officer Van, her hands still trembling. A cup of steaming hot tea sat on the table, but her mind remained trapped in the horrific storm of the previous night. Officer Van listened intently, jotting down every detail in his notebook, from the domestic abuse and being kicked out by her drunken husband to the appearance of the mysterious man in black. Your husband, Tuan, frequently drinks and assaults you. Is that correct? Officer Van asked, his voice low but commanding. Huen nodded slightly, tears welling up. He even brought his mistress into our home, and then threw us out like trash. However, when Huen described the stalker in black, Officer Van paused.
He glanced at a report from his colleagues who had patrolled the rubber forest area that morning. They had discovered strange footprints and a dropped cell phone near Lan's house. These clues proved the stalker wasn't a hallucination born of Huyen's fear. He was real, and he had a specific target. Officer Van asked Tu Huen to write a detailed statement. While she wrote, he stepped out onto the porch, gazing thoughtfully toward the forest. He knew this case wasn't just a simple matter of domestic violence. Behind Tuan's intoxication and that shadowy figure in black, there was undoubtedly a dark secret being hidden. The sky remained a gloomy gray, but the rain had subsided, leaving behind a thick mist that blanketed the rubber forest behind the village. Officer Van and his colleagues, dressed in their green uniforms, quickly deployed their forces. They weren't just searching for a stalker. They were searching for the truth behind Tu Huyen's terrified testimony. Under Officer Van's direction, the team pushed deep into the slippery trails. There, they discovered an abandoned leaf hut, still showing signs of a struggle and several shattered liquor bottles. Suddenly, a dark shadow bolted through the trees. "Stop! Police!" Officer Van's shout echoed through the entire forest. The chase was breathtaking. The man in black seemed to know the terrain better than anyone. However, through sheer determination, Officer Van cornered him at a cliffside. When the hood was finally pulled back, the truth left everyone stunned. It wasn't some unknown assassin, but Tu Huyen's own cousin, who had been missing for years. Meanwhile, back at Tu Huyen's house, another group of officers found Tuan unconscious from alcohol poisoning. But beside him was a stack of documents related to mortgaging the house to an illegal gambling ring. The man in black wasn't trying to hurt Tu Huen. He was trying to retrieve those papers before the mobsters could get to them. After the sweep, order seemed to be restored. Tuan was taken into mandatory rehab and faced legal action for his illegal contracts. The cousin in black, Huyen's silent protector, handed over all the property documents to Officer Van and quietly vanished, just as mysteriously as he had appeared. A few days later, at a dilapidated train station on the outskirts of town, Officer Van met Tu Huen to return her final identification documents.
and inform her that she was finally free. He found Hwen sitting on a waiting bench. Her face no longer showed fear or exhaustion, but instead, an eerie calmness. "Are you really leaving? Everything is settled now?" Officer Van asked, his eyes filled with thought. Hwen smiled, a faint smile that sent a chill down Van's spine. "This world is too small for secrets, Officer Van. Sometimes one must create a demon to become an angel." As the train began to move, Officer Van suddenly noticed a strange detail. The cloth bag Hwen had been clutching tightly, the one he assumed held her baby, seemed weightless as she lifted it. He stepped toward the spot where she had just been sitting and picked up an old, discarded photo. In the photo were Tu Hwen, the cousin, and a child. But the date on the photo showed that the baby had passed away 3 years ago. The train whistle shrieked, tearing through the mist. Tu Hwen stood by the carriage window, looking at Officer Van and waving a slight goodbye. She was traveling alone. There was no baby. It turned out that throughout the entire flight, the child was merely a phantom in her guilt-ridden mind, a tool used to gain the law's sympathy and her cousin's protection to eliminate her wretched husband. Officer Van stood frozen on the platform, the old photo in his hand. Had he helped a poor victim, or had he unwittingly assisted in a perfect revenge plot? The answer vanished into the rhythmic clatter of the train, disappearing into the darkness.
Thank you so much for watching today's video until the very end. Your presence is the greatest gift to me. Every view and every moment you spend here is a huge motivation for me to keep improving and releasing higher quality content in the future. Creating content isn't easy, but your silent support gives me the strength to stay creative every day. If you found today's video interesting and relaxing, please don't hesitate to give me a like. Your small actions are the most precious recognition of our team's hard work. And especially if you are new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any upcoming videos. The growth of this channel depends so much on your support. Let's build a civilized and connected